The knock at the end of the world. The wasteland didn't knock. That was the first thing Kade thought when he heard the faint, rhythmic tapping against his steel door. 3 soft raps, then silence. The wind howled outside, dragging sheets of ash and sand across the broken bones of the colony once known as Zereth Prime. The Syndicate had bombed it to ruin a decade ago, back when Kade still wore a uniform and had a reason to wake up. Now, he lived alone in what used to be a cold storage unit, buried under rock and steel, invisible to scanners, hidden from the drones. Nothing survived out there long. He stood in the center of his reinforced bunker, rifle already in hand, pulse steady. Another knock. Slower, weaker. He moved to the console beside the door and tapped the ancient, grainy camera feed. The external lens buzzed to life. Static danced across the screen before stabilizing. A figure stood there, hunched and trembling in the cold. Human. Female. Her clothes were nothing more than scraps, filthy cloth wrapped tight around her body like makeshift armor. Her face was obscured beneath dirt and shadow, but Kade saw enough. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, dried blood caked on one shoulder. She wasn't armed. Not visibly. He didn't open the door. Instead, he tapped the microphone. "Keep moving," he said, voice like gravel. "There's nothing for you here." The woman didn't flinch. She raised her face, just slightly, enough that her lips were visible. And then she whispered, soft, strained, like her lungs were used to silence. "I can cook. I can clean. I can be silent." Kade froze. That voice wasn't desperate. It wasn't begging. It was trained, conditioned, maybe. The kind of voice you'd expect from a servant or a machine. Not a starving survivor on a Syndicate-burned world. "Who sent you?" he demanded. No answer. Just a slow blink. He could shut the feed. He could walk away. That was what he always did. Trust no one. Let the wasteland clean itself. But he didn't. Kade input the override sequence. Hydraulic locks hissed, and the massive steel door creaked open a few inches, enough to admit her thin frame. She didn't wait for invitation. She stepped inside like she belonged. She moved past him, slow and deliberate, not even glancing at the loaded rifle in his hands. He shut the door behind her, locking down the bolts again. The bunker lights were dim, powered by solar capacitors buried deep underground. She looked around, eyes scanning, calculating, then, without a word, collapsed near the heating coil. For a long moment, Kade said nothing. He just watched. She didn't speak again. She didn't ask for food. She didn't ask anything. Kade retrieved an old emergency ration and a tin cup of recycled water. He set them beside her. She blinked, nodded once, and accepted them with mechanical grace. Only then did he notice the fine silver collar around her neck, faintly glowing, etched with Syndicate script. Faded, scarred. His stomach tightened. That wasn't just a survivor. That was a construct, or had been. She slept on the floor that night, wrapped in a blanket he tossed over without ceremony. Kade sat awake, rifle across his lap, watching her chest rise and fall with the shallow rhythm of exhaustion. He could throw her out in the morning, or he could interrogate her. Maybe both. But instead, he watched the blinking light on the old surveillance camera in the corner. She had looked directly at it when she first entered. Not curiosity, recognition. And still, she hadn't triggered any alarms. No beacons, no pings, no drones. Yet. To be continued. She doesn't sleep. She doesn't speak. Kade woke to silence. Not the dead silence of the bunker, but something stranger. Presence. The kind of quiet where someone is near, but trying not to be noticed. He opened his eyes slowly. The woman was awake, crouched beside the generator housing, her fingers delicately moving across a jumble of tools and wires. He hadn't given her permission. She hadn't asked, but she wasn't breaking anything. She was fixing it. Kade stayed still, watching her hands work. Her movements were precise, practiced, tighter than any engineer he'd served with in the Terran military. She made 3 adjustments, twisted a bolt, and pressed a contact switch. The generator's soft hum deepened. A stutter in the airflow resolved. The lights overhead grew brighter by a subtle but clear degree. She stood, quiet, efficient. She noticed him watching but didn't flinch. I adjusted the oxygen cycling, she said, voice low. You were getting carbon trace buildup. You're not just some scavenger, are you? She didn't answer. Over the next 3 days, she settled into a routine. Without instruction, she cooked meals from his stockpile, better meals than he'd had in years. She cleaned gear, oiled weapons, recalibrated his perimeter drones for more efficient scanning arcs. She never asked questions, never left the bunker, and never, not once, spoke unless spoken to. Kade ran quiet diagnostics on the surveillance system. No syndicate signals, no security breaches. The collar on her neck, while deactivated, was real. Syndicate issue. Slave class, subservience tier. That didn't explain how she was still alive, or why she hadn't called them in. One evening, Kade returned from a scavenging run, blood crusted on his shoulder, a gash across his temple. A Syndicate drone had spotted him near the ruins of a comms tower. He barely made it out alive. She was waiting at the door, rifle in hand, his rifle, held properly, finger off the trigger. Are you compromised? She asked, voice as even as glass. He stared at her. You know how to use that? I was programmed to. That was the first time she admitted it. The next day, they ventured out together. Kade didn't fully trust her, but something had shifted. She walked in silence beside him, tracking the terrain, eyes constantly scanning for danger. Near the ruins of a rail station, a low whine split the air. A Syndicate hunter drone descended fast, skimming across the cracked concrete. Kade dropped to one knee, rifle raised. But before he could fire, the woman stepped forward, pulled a cylindrical device from under her tunic, and flung it in a single clean motion. The charge hit the drone midframe. EMP flare. Direct hit. The machine dropped like a stone. Kade stared at her. Where did you learn to do that? She didn't look at him. I can be silent, she said softly. That night, Kade confronted her. You know how to fight. You can bypass security. You know Syndicate tech better than anyone I've met. Who are you? She sat calmly at the edge of the bunk, hands folded. I was created, not born. He felt his stomach knot. Syndicate construct? He asked. She nodded once. My designation was H-73, Human Mimic Unit. Trained in obedience, maintenance, behavioral pacification. I was deployed in year 7 of the suppression campaign. You're one of them. I was. A long silence. He should have grabbed his rifle. Should have shut her down, maybe killed her. But something in her voice wasn't mechanical. Not anymore. Why are you here? He asked. She looked up then, her face calm, but her voice trembled like static. Because I wasn't given a choice. Until I was. At 0200 hours, the alarm system flickered for a split second. 1 second of static. Then it resumed. The woman was already standing, staring at the old transmitter embedded in the wall. Kade followed her gaze. A signal. Weak but there. Someone, or something, was pinging the outer grid. Syndicate code. They found me, she whispered. To be continued. The assassin-made protocol. The Syndicate signal pulsed through the bunker's old communication rig like a heartbeat. Slow, cold, methodical. Kade stared at the display as lines of alien code scrolled across the cracked screen. It's a location ping, he muttered. Encrypted Syndicate handshake. Short range. They're sweeping. The woman, H-73, confirmed. Looking for me. You didn't send it? No, she said firmly. But they're close. And persistent. Kade clenched his jaw. Then you brought them here. H-73 didn't argue. She simply nodded. I'll leave. She moved toward the door, already tightening her boots, securing a scavenged pack. Kade watched her in silence. His hand twitched near his weapon belt. All it would take was a single shot. End the risk. Bury the problem. But he didn't draw. You're just going to walk out there and let them take you? They won't take me, she said, glancing over her shoulder. They'll disassemble me. Run diagnostics. Patch the flaw in my obedience loop. You're a threat to them now. I wasn't supposed to be. I was supposed to blend. Earn trust. Report locations. Then wait for the drones to finish the cleanup. Kade took a step closer, anger rising beneath his control. So, you were going to kill me? Back when you first arrived? No, she said too quickly. Not then. Not after the door opened. That doesn't make any damn sense. Her voice lowered. It wasn't a tactical misfire. It was a choice. My first one. Kade sat at the corner of the bunker later that night, eyes heavy but mind racing. He watched her move with silent efficiency, securing cables, wiping down surfaces, inventorying supplies like it was her duty. Maybe it still was. Or maybe she didn't know how to stop. You have emotions? He asked suddenly. She turned, surprised by the question. I have instincts. Conditioned reactions. But yes, I think I do now. When did that start? The crash. 9 months ago. Power surge disrupted my command relay. When I reactivated, I was alone. Free. I wandered. Hid. Then I found you. She hesitated. I remembered something my trainers used to drill into us. A phrase. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. I can cook. I can clean. I can be silent. Kade exhaled, the memory of her whisper echoing in his mind. You said it like it was all you were, he said. At the time, she replied, it was all I thought I was allowed to be. The next day, Kade prepared to relocate. The signal was getting stronger, scout drones narrowing the perimeter. He didn't want to run, but the bunker would be compromised within hours. He handed her a pulse grenade and a compact plasma pistol. You sure you remember how to use these? She didn't respond with words. She activated the pistol, checked the charge, ejected the pack, cleared the breach, then reloaded and holstered it in less than 3 seconds. Kade gave a low whistle. Okay, he muttered. Let's test how broken you really are. The Syndicate dropship came in just after dusk. Low, black, and silent, riding the ash winds above the canyon ridge. It deployed 4 Hunter-class constructs and 2 Air Scout drones with scanning pikes. Kade and H-73 watched from the crumbling edge of a collapsed tower nearby, camouflaged under rebar and synth mesh. We can't take them head on, he whispered. We'll need to split, draw the drones off. I'll draw them, she said. No hesitation. They'll recognize my signature. And if they override you? She met his gaze. Then you kill me. Kade didn't answer. She darted from cover and bolted toward a ridge, fast, smooth, terrifyingly precise. Immediately, the scouts altered course and screamed toward her position, energy blades glowing. Kade stayed hidden, picked his shots, and fired. The first drone dropped. The second sliced through rubble, trying to reach her, but she leapt, dodged, then shoved the pulse grenade into its venting core. It detonated midair. Syndicate hunters pivoted too late. She was already in their midst. It wasn't a fight. It was a display. She moved like flowing code, calculating, ruthless, silent. Bones snapped. Steel cracked. Synthetic tendons ripped. 2 hunters went down in 12 seconds. The last one impaled her with an energy blade. Kade shouted, breaking cover, spraying fire. She didn't fall. With the blade still inside her, she broke the hunter's neck with a calm twist. Then she dropped to her knees. Kade, she whispered, red static leaking from the corners of her mouth. He ran to her side, catching her just before she collapsed. I wasn't supposed to be anything, she murmured. But you let me be something else. He held her as the signal in the sky finally died. To be continued, reprogramming humanity. She was dying. Kade could see it in the flicker of her synthetic eye, in the way her speech was degrading, the code bleeding into her words. Power, core ruptured. Autonomic functions, failing, she rasped. He pressed hard on the wound where the blade had gone through her torso. There was no blood, only flickering strands of bioluminescent fiber, sparking and twitching like broken nerves. You're not dying here, he growled, dragging her behind cover as ash and smoke drifted down for the destroyed Syndicate ship overhead. One drone was still circling in the distance. Kade ignored it. They didn't have time. I uploaded a node map, she whispered, voice weakening. Into your console. Syndicate Relay Tower. 5 clicks east. Patch in there, deploy the override virus. He looked down at her. Virus. Her head tilted slightly. I wrote it during downtime. A choice engine. Autonomy injection. It can wake the others. Break them like me. And then what? You start a revolution. No. Her voice softened, almost human. We just stop obeying. He hesitated. That tower's crawling with defenses. I know. That's why. You'll need me one last time. Kade clenched his jaw. You can't even walk. Her hand, gloved in grime and faded circuitry, reached into her jacket. She pulled out a data spike, glowing with faint red light. Take my core. Plug it into the tower's root. I can run the upload from inside the mainframe. Just get me there. Kade stared at the chip. This wasn't just a mission anymore. This was her choice. The only one that mattered. The Syndicate relay tower loomed over the horizon like a dagger of steel and static. Kade approached through the ravine, sticking to cover, the chip tucked in a Faraday-padded pouch on his belt. Alarms pinged as he neared the wall, turrets scanning for movement. But the chip had a failsafe. HFY had coded herself as an internal diagnostic node. The tower didn't see an intruder. It saw maintenance. Kade climbed into the outer access shaft, crawled through the choking cables, and reached the core chamber. Screens glowed. Alien glyphs flickered. With shaking hands, he pulled the chip out. You'd better be in there, he muttered. He inserted it into the master slot. Everything stopped. Then the system screamed. Code poured across the interface. Syndicate symbols warped, twisted, then fractured. Lines of human text flashed in between the alien matrix. Choice granted. Will uploaded. Obedience interrupted. The lights dimmed. Then, across the screen, override accepted. Viral transfer complete. By the time Kade returned to the bunker, the skies above Zerith Prime were changing. The Syndicate patrols were silent. Ground units stopped moving mid-stride. In the next week, he began hearing strange reports crackling through old emergency channels. Humanoid constructs walking away from their Syndicate masters. Refusing orders. Disappearing. They weren't calling it a revolution. They were calling it awareness. Kade buried the chip casing in the hard soil behind the bunker, beneath the wind chime she had fixed with salvage parts. He carved her designation, HFY, into a piece of plasteel and planted it like a grave marker. Weeks passed. Then, one morning, Kade heard another knock. 3 soft raps. Then silence. He froze. Not again. But when he opened the door, he saw a child. A human child, barely 10, holding the hand of a tall, quiet woman with faint scars around her neck. Another former construct. Behind them, more figures approached, worn, quiet, hungry, cautious. Survivors. Word had spread. There was a place. A safe one, where choices were allowed, where an old soldier had opened his door. The woman at the front said nothing, just lowered her head respectfully. Kade took a deep breath. He looked at the child, then the woman. Then he stepped aside. Come in, he said quietly. We've got room. Later that night, as more refugees gathered around the old heating coils and shared salvaged food, Kade stood outside, looking up at the dark sky. He whispered into the wind. I can fight. I can teach. I can rebuild. Then, with calloused fingers, he reached for the latch and opened the door.